Hello and welcome back to Election Time News America. Today is Saturday, October 11th, 2025, and we're going to be looking into the 2026 gubernatorial election specifically today. Election Time News are one stop for all things elections and politics, from summations to poll reviews and news. Subscribe below for more content like this about American, Canadian, and Australian elections. Also, sure to follow the Substack, Threads, Instagram, and X. We are booming on Threads. Thank you so much. As well as our website, electiontimene.ws. It's also linked in the description below for the news feeds as well as all the information for our latest predictions. It is still being built up, so thank you for the patience. Remember, there's never a dull moment in politics. So, what we have here is the open map, and we're just going to get right into the map. Not really have anything to note about the political environment because it does change. It's probably going to be a bit of a blue year, though. You can see that sometimes it does get affected by some of these years. Like in 2014, it was a strong red wave year. In 2010, it was a strong red wave year. In 2012, it was a blue year, and so Democrats were able to hold on in places like Montana, West Virginia. In 2008, it was a blue year, and they actually flipped a lot of these seats as well. So it's that sort of thing where sometimes it does actually end up getting affected. So it's going to be a bit of a bluer year most likely. So they're going to be able to carry on some things like that. But the safe states most are going to be California. We also have in that list Hawaii, Illinois, not New York, Massachusetts, Maryland. And also in that column, we have Connecticut in there as well. And then we also do have the state of Colorado. But other than that, there's actually not really any, there's not really any strong other states other than that. So next, for the Republicans, we do have Vermont, believe it or not. That's actually a safe Republican state. Phil Scott there actually has the highest approval rating of any governor in the entire country. Then we also are going to move down, and we have a few normal red states: Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, just to name those first few. Then we also have in this column is going to be Texas narrowly at 10.7%. So, and then finally, actually, one final, no, that's actually not going to be safe now. So, because now we did officially change our number from 10 to 12. And so looking at the numbers here, 12 plus points is going to be that safe number. Strong performance is going to be likely 8 to 12. Not probable though. There we go. 12 plus, likely 6 to 12 points. Lean is 2 to 6, and then tilt is anything below that. So that's going to be the new margins for these states. So there's not much to talk about that there, though. McKee is narrowly going to win by a safe margin in Rhode Island, but there's a quick thing of note is he's actually the third least popular governor in the entire country, so just at +5. But that was something interesting of note there, and that's basically about it there. So next we're moving on to the likely state. Starting things off is actually New York is going to be a safe state, but now Stefanik is actually doing relatively well. So it's going to be the first thing there is at least Stefanik in she's not formally announced it yet. She's doing relatively well. In the hypothetical polling, Hochul versus Stefanik, actually, Hochul's only ahead by 5, so this may end up changing a bit, but she hasn't officially announced whether or not she has courteously actually endorsed Stefanik. She hasn't announced whether or not she's officially entered yet, so it's a little bit early, but and actually, Hochul's getting primaried potentially by her own lieutenant governor, but as of right now, it does appear that she may end up winning by just barely and narrowly a safe margin, but I'm actually going to drop it down to 11.8 there, which is just barely going to be a likely margin in the state of New York. She won only by 6.5 points in 2022 against relatively unknown candidate Lee Zeldin. So potentially definitely shows some potential weakness for Hochul there. So that's going to be the main interesting thing up in the Northeast, other than, of course, Pennsylvania, which is actually going to be right next. Pennsylvania, 11.3%, just barely likely. Josh Shapiro won by 14.8, just under 15 percentage points in 2022. And so that's going to be the main thing to look at there. So just a quick recap here. We have, again, that's going to be New York is going to be just under 11.8%, just under 12. But then Pennsylvania is going to be Josh Shapiro. That's going to be a margin of 11.3% right now. Stacey Garrity is not a weak candidate. She actually was the candidate, the person that broke Josh Shapiro's record that he made for the most votes gained for a statewide candidate in the entire state and in history. But then Stacey Garrity broke it in 2024. She's not a weak candidate by any means. And so based on that, with polling, Shapiro broke 55%, 39% for Garrity, 5% undecided. This is not a very good poll by any means. So he's probably going to win by maybe up to 20. Probably relatively unlikely, but it could be. That's about probably his ceiling. I think it's going to be South Carolina by 11.1. This is actually going to be a likely seat. I did put that down as safe. McMaster won by 17.5, but at this point, there's no incumbency in there because McMaster is term limited. There's nobody really strong here, but it's just based on Nancy Mace did enter the race, but there's a competitive primary, so that's going to hurt the Republicans a bit. Yet there's not really anybody here. A candidate for governor in 2010, McLeod, obviously 2010, very, very Republican year. Actually did relatively well, but not gonna be a blue state, that's for sure. Texas, 10.7%. Greg Abbott's a relatively popular candidate. He won by 10.9 in 2022 against Beto O'Rourke, who was generally actually a bit overhyped, honestly, at that point in time. In 2018, he did phenomenal against Ted Cruz, but his hype definitely did come down after that point in time. So fix an audio real quick. So that's definitely going to be something to note there is his popularity definitely dropped. He lost by 11, but there's not really any necessarily very strong candidates. It's just the fact that I think at this point there might be a bit of tiredness, I guess, against him. If Beto O'Rourke were to enter, then it'd probably actually potentially get worse. Jasmine Crockett rejected it. That would probably be the best one. Castro, the representative for the 20th Congressional District, potentially, because I think he actually got drawn out of his district. But there's not actually anybody else strong in this race, so it may end up going above 12, depending on how things keep going. Then it's going to be Maine, 9.2%. This is going to be another hold for the Democrats. There's not really anybody here on the Republican side. It's not a very strong red state with many Republicans here. I don't think there's necessarily anybody that'd be able to pick this off well, but instead you have the Maine Secretary of State here. You have Angus King III, the son of the current U.S. Senator Angus King. You have Hannah Pingree, who was the former Speaker of the House of Representatives. So a lot of very strong candidates, and actually, so this may end up going up to about 10 points, considering how strong even Mills, who's relatively unpopular, managed to do, the second least popular governor in the entire country, managed to do in 2022. So that may end up going above 12 points in just a bit. We'll have to see how things go. New Mexico, 8.8%. It's the right trending state, but Grisham is now out. She's actually a relatively unpopular candidate because she's term limited. But there's no Republicans that can capitalize on the fact that it's an open seat. And so you have former U.S. Representative, former Mayor of Las Cruces and Bernalillo County District Attorney. So all of them are going to be in this, so that's going to potentially make things a bit more interesting. New Hampshire, relatively popular Governor Kelly Ayotte is running for re-election. However, she's running into some issues as Trump is gearing up to potentially throw her a primary upset here. Senior advisor to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I don't remember exactly if this is actually the guy that officially... Yeah, I think it actually is him. So she is not officially announced whether she's running again, but it's very likely that she will. But the Democrats don't actually have anybody strong here. Even in the state of New Hampshire, everybody has said no. Goodlander said no, and Pappas is running for the Senate. So that's actually going to be a relatively strong hold for the Republicans either way. I think that actually if anything, Iowa might be favored to win the primaries. Minnesota, 8.3%. Tim Walz coming off of the national stage now, improving by just over half a point in the state of Minnesota. He announced not all that long ago that he is going to run for re-election. And so you look at the Republicans, they really don't have anybody. And so, I mean, that's really not going to do much for them by any means. So that's relatively open field there. Not really much of a strong candidacy there. Kansas, 7.6%. This is right up, getting right out to the lean margin here. Kelly Ayotte, not Kelly Ayotte, wow. Laura Kelly is term limited. She was able to do very well for the state, but then the Lieutenant Governor David Toland actually did decline to run, but Laura Kelly endorsed Ethan Corson, who is a state senator, and there's another state senator running in here as well. So that's going to definitely be interesting to watch. But the Republicans have insurance commissioner, secretary of state running, president of the Kansas Senate as well, Wichita board member, which is former Governor Jeff Collier in here as well. So all of that together, most of them say that it's going to be lean Republican. Inside Elections doesn't have any specifics. They just have that it's going to be a competitive race. But likely Republican there. There's no real strong candidates here. And same is said for Alaska, the second to last likely race, the other one being Oregon. Those are the final two likely races. Oregon, Tina Kotek running for re-election. She only won by 3.4% in 2022. She's somewhat popular, plus 11 on the lower end of the pack there, but she is expected to do relatively okay. There's no Republicans that can really capitalize on her somewhat in popularity, so she's not officially declared yet, but it is very likely that she will end up running again. And then, of course, that was Alaska. That's going to be a somewhat competitive race, considering that the Democrats actually did get Tom Begich into this, so that's going to be interesting to see. But the Republican primary is actually very full. Nancy Dahlstrom's actually in that. Treg Taylor's in that as well. You have a lot of candidates here. That's actually going to be very interesting to see who ends up winning that contested primary. But Tom Begich is actually running, and so he actually is the uncle of the current U.S. representative that beat Mary Peltola, Nick Begich. So that's going to be interesting to see who potentially ends up coming on top there. Most of them have it relatively close, or not relatively close. It's going to be a relatively one-sided race all in all. Then we go to Florida. This is going to be lean Republican narrowly now with that updated margin. Trump's approval is taking a tank as well, so that's just going to harm a bit, but not much in Florida, and they still approve. 2024 voters shall approve him by 4 points. But anyway, that's just something quick I wanted to show off there. DeSantis is term limited, but Byron Donalds is likely going to win the primary here. He is the Florida's 19th congressional district. Democrats have David Jolly, though, former Republican U.S. representative from 13th congressional district. He may be able to get some cross-party support there. It depends on how things go, but even then, that's not really going to mean much when it's such a hard trending state. A Democratic pollster actually found him up by 1, but then a non-one, 28% undecided, 4% others, but 36-32 for a non-partisan poll, and that was still a few months ago. But honestly, that's still not really that good, even this early in the race. DeSantis won by 19.5 in 2022, which is huge, and that was really the final nail in the coffin for Florida. That's why Harris spent no time there. So Ohio by 5.4%. Vivek Ramaswamy is probably going to end up being a subpar candidate, but Mike DeWine is, in fact, term limited, first elected in 2018. Vivek Ramaswamy is likely to end up winning this primary relatively decisively. The Democrats have Amy Acton, who actually in the beginning was, believe it or not, leading Ramaswamy, but he officially declared his candidacy, was down by 5, down by 1 with the Democratic pollster, and then Emerson College actually found her down by 10. And that's with 12% undecided. She would need every single one of them in order to win. So that's definitely going to be very difficult. But if Tim Ryan does end up running here, that could potentially make things a bit more contested. But then that would also harm them with the Democratic primary. So it's not necessarily sure which one's actually going to be worse, but as of right now, it is lean red. Mike DeWine ended up winning in a landslide for re-election in 2022 after he won relatively narrowly by only 3 3/4 points against Cordray in 2018. Next is going to be the state of Nevada, 4.8%. This is going to be a somewhat slim margin for Joe Lombardo, who actually flipped the seat against incumbent Steve Sisolak in 2022. However, Sisolak has been thinking about potentially running again, and if he does, that would almost certainly make it double digits immediately. Joe Lombardo is in fact running here. Aaron Ford, the Attorney General, is the one who's running. That's a relatively strong candidate there. But if Steve Sisolak joins, not only will it make a competitive primary, but also it will mean that if Sisolak doesn't end up winning, then immediately this race will go to double digits. But Sisolak flipped the seat against Laxalt by 4.1% in 2018. In 2014, though, Sandoval won by 47%. So obviously they do enjoy their Republican governors by quite a bit when they do elect them. Even in 2006, they reelected a Republican governor, so that does mean a good bit. But as it's trending to the right now, I think that definitely it could end up being a bit stronger showing. We're going to have to get some polling first. Wisconsin, 2.2%. The last lean state here for the map is going to be in the state of Wisconsin, and that's going to be the and that's going to be after Tony Evers actually decided to retire this cycle, and that's going to be with 3.5 point margin. Would have definitely been strongly favored, but he in fact is actually now retiring. And on the Democratic primary, they actually have the Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, who I believe got the Austin Davis actually, but looks like Evers did actually not endorse anybody. But Republican primary, they don't really have anybody strong. They do have Tom Tiffany, who is generally going to be leading right now. He is from the 7th Congressional District, and potentially may have Eric Hobdy, but he has officially basically been just quiet so far. But Tom Tiffany, not necessarily a poor candidate by any means, but they do have the lieutenant governor on the Democratic side, so that's going to definitely help things quite a bit for the Democrats in that scenario. Arizona, 2.1%, very, very narrow, almost tilt. This is going to be a very, very narrow win in 2022. Katie Hobbs defeating Kari Lake, but that actually shows a very poor showing for Hobbs, considering that Lake would then go on in a red wave year to lose to Ruben Gallego by 2.5 points. So honestly, she's a very weak candidate, and so she is in fact running for another term. The Republicans have Andy Biggs and David Schweikert and Karen Taylor Robson. I think the best candidate might be maybe probably not Andy Biggs, maybe not Schweikert, but probably not Robson. She definitely would have been the better candidate in 2022 though, but they did end up voting in Lake. And they Robson's been leading so far in the polling, but if we look down at the general election polling, Katie Hobbs has been beating Biggs by 2 and Robson by 2 as well, with 18% undecided, but still bit of a narrow lead. It's Arizona, which still is slightly trending left. Definitely 2024 put a huge break on that, but it is slightly trending to the left. Iowa, 2.1%. There's actually one more lean state there narrowly is going to be the state of Iowa, and this is with Rob Sand, the only Democrat who has won statewide in the 212th decade in Iowa. Auditor of state, he won by just a few thousand votes. And so there's actually no polls yet, but the Republican primary, they do have Randy Feenstra, 4th Congressional District, and that he's probably going to end up winning. Not very strong candidate. They actually did have Kim Reynolds, the incumbent, actually has declined to run, which generally would be a very bad sign, as incumbents do well, especially with, Reynolds having won by 18.5, but she actually is the least popular governor in the entire country at -7, the only one underwater. So this actually is beneficial to the Democratic Party. And so, to the Republic, this is beneficial to the Republican Party as they are now able to start over with a new candidate, new face in this race. Then we have the state of Georgia, 1.5 point margin for the Republicans. This is a flip from the last projection. This is because there's not really any strong showing going on so far with the Democrats. Now, the primary field is you have Jeff Duncan and Keisha Lance Bottoms, mainly the two that are going to be running against each other. If Stacey Abrams enters the race, then Democrats should just give up entirely in this state. But you have Chris Carr, Burt Jones, Brad Raffensperger, all running against each other. It's going to be a competitive primary, so that's going to be the main difficulty here. But Jeff Duncan may end up putting up a very strong race in this, but Keisha Lance Bottoms also probably wouldn't be that bad considering that turnout in the Atlanta area is generally why Democrats end up winning in Georgia in the first place. But that is going to be a very crucial race. It's very, very close. It depends on how strong they can capitalize off of this very, very poor approval of Trump in Georgia. It's the third lowest out of all the states that went Biden Trump. So that's going to be a main thing to watch as well. And then finally, we have the state of Michigan, which is going to be tilt blue very, very narrowly. After Whitmer won by 10.5 points, it is so, so close. And that's mostly due to Mike Duggan, the third party candidate. The Democrats, Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, and Gilchrist, the lieutenant governor, are in this race. But Republican primary, they do have former Michigan Attorney General. They have John James is going to be the main guy to look at. John James actually ran in the Senate in 2020 against Peters and only lost by 1 3/4 points against him, who was an incumbent, relatively popular incumbent. So he's not a weak candidate by any means. But if we look down at the polling, which has already been done a little bit because of the interesting thing about this race, Benson's probably the most likely to win this so far, ahead by 1 with Gleffengard Group. That's actually a relatively old poll at this point, interestingly enough. But this is including definite voters. So 38-33 amongst definite voters, 8% undecided. Mike Duggan getting 21%, relatively spread evenly across both parties. So it's not going to be just the fact that even though he is the mayor of Detroit, he's actually not taking many votes away from just the Democrats in that region. So he may not end up being a spoiler candidate for the Democrats. We will absolutely have to see, though. So that at the final end of that is going to be 27 for the Republicans, 23 for the Democrats, which is the exact same as it is right now. It's just one flip in Kansas for the Republicans, which means they will end up being back where they were after likely losing Virginia this year and narrowly losing in New Jersey, as are the current projections. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. Make sure to check up on the one that is actually coming out later today. And so it's very special. That's all I'm going to say about that right now. Thank you all again, and have a fantastic rest of your day.